Hello, this video is for IXL activity 8.W.9 where we're going to solve multi-step equations. The 3-character code for this activity is 55 kilo, 55 kilo. So in our first question here, we're going to have to deal with this fraction, right? So we've talked about it in other lessons in the past. The best way to get rid of a fraction is to multiply by its denominator. So we're going to take what's on each side, and we're going to multiply both sides by the denominator. In this case, the denominator is 2. And what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. Now, this is a multi-step equation, so it's going to take more than one step to solve it. So our first step is going to be to multiply both sides by 2. Well, the 2's are going to cancel each other out over here on the left and leave us with c minus 3. And then 2 times 2, well, that's 4, right? So now we can go ahead and do our next step, and that is to go ahead and add 3. We're going to add 3 because the c is tied to the 3 through subtraction. The opposite operation is addition, and we're going to add the very number we wish to get rid of, which in this case is 3, because in the end we want to be able to isolate the variable c. That means to have it all by itself. That would tell us what the solution to the equation is. And what we do to one side, we're going to have to do to the other, and I'm already thinking of the answer, aren't I? So they're adding 3 to each side. So 4 plus 3 is 7, and we know that this negative 3 and the positive 3 cancel each other out, so we end up with c equals 7. On the next one, we need to go ahead and, you might be wondering, why multiple step here? It's just subtraction, that's it. Well, we'll see what that other step is. So we start off with 5 minus t equals 3. Well, we need to get rid of this 5, right? So let's go ahead and subtract 5. What we do to one side, we're going to go ahead and do to the other. So the positive 5 and the negative 5 will cancel each other out, leaving us with negative t equals, and 3 minus 5 would give us negative 2. Well, we can't leave this in terms of a negative t. It has to be in terms of a positive t, right? So the second step that we're going to have to do is we're going to divide each side by negative 1. Remember, what we do to one side, we do to the other. As long as we do the same thing to both sides, we still have in equivalent statements. So negative divided by negative is positive, t divided by 1 is t, and negative divided by negative is positive, and 2 divided by 1 is 2. So we end up with t is equal to negative 2. Let's go ahead and go on to our next problem here. Well, we have some parentheses, right? So we're going to have to distribute. And we have to distribute this 2 into the quantity of y plus 1. So we have 2 times y is going to be 2y. And 2 times 1 is going to be 2. And we'll bring down that 8 we have there. So that was our first step, was to distribute. Our next step is actually going to be, looks like 3 steps, right? So our first step was here to distribute. Our second step is going to be our second one here. Second step is going to be to subtract 2 from each side. What we do to one side, let's do to the other. If we subtract 2, the 2's would cancel each other out, leaving us with 2y. And 8 minus 2 is 6. Our third step, there we go, our third step is going to be to divide by 2, because the 2 is tied to the y through multiplication. The opposite operation is division. We want to divide by the very number we wish to get rid of, and what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So the 2's will cancel each other, leaving us with just y on the left, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we'll put our 3 in there. Same thing over here. We're going to have to do a distributive property situation for ours. Yeah, distributive property. There we go. I said that correctly. So let's go with, I like all this to be over here, because that way my variable is going to be over here. So I'm going to move all that over there. So first I'm going to do the distributive property. 3 times d is going to be 3d. And 3 times negative 3 is going to be negative 3, negative 9. All right, 3 times 3 is 9. And that's a positive times a negative, so we get a negative. And if you really wanted to, we could recognize that as plus a negative 9. That would work also. And then we have negative 18. So our next step is going to be to get rid of this negative 9. And we're going to do that by adding 9, right? That would be the opposite of negative 9, would be positive 9. What we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So the negative 9 and positive 9 will cancel each other out, leaving us with 3d. And we also have to deal with this negative 18 plus 9. So if we think of negative 18 plus 9, we realize that we're adding two integers that are one's negative, one's opposite. One's negative, one's positive. So we're actually going to subtract these. We're going to do the 18 minus 9, and we'll get 9. And the question is whether this is a positive 9 or a negative 9. Well, the negative 18 has a greater absolute value, so our answer is going to be negative, just like the 18 is negative. So we have negative 9. Next step is to go ahead and divide by 3. Because of the multiplication here, we're going to undo it with division. We're going to divide by 3 because that's the number we wish to get rid of. And what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So the 3's cancel each other out, leaving us with D, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So D equals negative 3. On the next one, we have a fraction, right? So best way to get rid of a fraction, go ahead and multiply by its denominator. So we're going to multiply both sides by negative 9. That's what the denominator is. The negative 9's will cancel each other out, leaving us with u minus 60 equals, and then negative times negative is positive, and 9 times 4 is 36. So now I want to get rid of the negative 60, so let's go ahead and add 60. And what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So I end up with those canceling each other out. I end up with just u equals, and 36 plus 60 is 96. So u equals 96. On the next problem here, we have 4 times quantity of y plus 3.3. So we need to go ahead and distribute this 4 into both of these values that are inside the parentheses. So 4 times y is going to be 4y, and 4 times 3.3, well, it's going to be positive, we know that, and 3.3 times 4, well, 4 times 3 is 12, carry the 1, and again, 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13, and we have one number after the decimal place there, and none there. 1 plus 0 is 1, so we need to move the decimal over one place, so that's going to be 13.2 equals 18.04. So now we want to deal with this positive 13.2, so let's subtract 13.2. What we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. Oh, wrong, 0.2. And I'll put a 0 on there for make our subtraction a little easier. Those are going to cancel each other out, leaving us with 4y on the left. And then we have 18.04 minus 13.2. So let's go ahead and do that subtraction. 4 minus 0 is 4. 0 minus 2, we need to borrow, make that 7. And this is going to become 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. This is where our decimal belongs right here. And 7 minus 3 is 4. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So we end up with a positive 4.84. Next, we need to go ahead and divide both sides by 4 because the 4 is tied to the y through multiplication. And the opposite operation is division. And whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. The 4's will cancel each other, leaving us with y. And then 4.84 divided by 4. 4.84. We're going to divide that by 4. Then put our decimal where it goes in our answer. 4 will go into 4 once. And that's going to be 0. Let's bring down the 8. 4 will go into 8 twice. And that's going to be 8. That's going to give it 0. Let's bring down the 4. And 4 will go into 4 once. So it's going to be 1.21. So y equals 1.21. Our next two problems that we have here are both of them are fractions. So let's go ahead and remember, best way to get rid of a fraction is to multiply by the denominator. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2, and the 2's over here on the left will cancel each other, leaving us with s minus 9, and 3 times 2 equals 6. So let's go ahead and add 9 to each side, because we want to get rid of this negative 9. Those will cancel each other out, leaving us with s, and 6 plus 9 is 15. So s equals 15. On this next one here, before I even do this problem, something jumps out to me. I got this 2.9 up here and this 2.9 here, and I'm dividing by 2. So right away, I'm thinking this has to be 2.9, right? Because if I'm going to add them together, then divide them by 2 and get the same thing, I get 2.9. Now, I'm pretty sure that the answer is 2.9. We can go ahead and follow the process to make sure that that is correct. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's first multiply both sides by the denominator of 2, and that means that these 2's will cancel each other, leaving us with y equal, not y equals, but y plus, right? So y plus 2.9, what's in the numerator, equals, and then 2.9 times 2, well, 29 times 2 is going to be 58, but I got the decimal over here in one spot, so that's going to be 5.8, correct? And this is 2.9. There we go. I'm like, wait a second, that's 29. That's not going to work out. So 29 times 2 is going to be 5.8. Now I need to subtract minus 2.9 from each side. So minus 2.9. And those are going to cancel each other out, leave me with y. And then 5.8 minus 2.9. 18 minus 9, or 8 minus 9, can't do that. I need to borrow from this and make that a 4, and this is going to become an 18. So 18 minus 9 is 9, and 4 minus 2 is 2. And sure enough, just as I predicted or thought in the first place, is that that has to be 2.9. All right, let's look at our last two problems here, and yes, they are decimals. So I just might use my calculator for this one. Because I get tired of lining up decimals and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that. I see what's happening here. We're going to have a negative. We're going to have to divide by negative in the end to get that to work out. So 12.4 minus u equals 4.44. So this is a positive 12.4, so we need to add a negative 12.4 to each side, or that is to say subtract negative, or subtract 12.4 from both sides. And these are going to cancel each other out, leave me with negative u equals, and now I need to do this one here. So that is, let's see, that's 4.44 minus 12, which is the same as plus a negative 12.4. And we realize that this is the addition of a positive and a negative decimal number, so we need to follow the rule of actually subtract. So we're going to take the one with the greatest absolute value and subtract from that the one with the lesser absolute value. So 4, and I know I said I was going to use my calculator, but I just can't seem to help myself today. So let's see, 10. We're going to have to borrow, right? This is going to become 0. This will become 10, and 10 minus 4 is 6. And we need our decimal there. And now I can't take 4 away from 0, so I'm going to have to borrow again. That's going to become a 1, and this will become a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. And then I can't take 4 from 1, but I can see this is 11 minus 4, which is going to give me 7. So this equals 7.66. And we notice that the negative 12.4 has a greater absolute value than the positive 4.44. So since the one with the greatest absolute value is negative, our answer is going to be negative as well. So that equals negative 7.66. Now I can't leave this in terms of a negative u. It has to be positive. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 1. And whenever we do that, we're going to get a positive u, because negative divided by negative is positive. U divided by 1 is 1. And now this is going to be a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 7.66 divided by 1 is going to be 7.66. So it's kind of a little trick if you think about it. If we don't look at this dividing by the negative 1, it's kind of like if we change the sign of the left, let's change the sign of the right. It works out for us. But what's happening is technically you are indeed dividing by a negative 1. Or you could say you're multiplying by a negative 1. Either one would be true. On the next one, I have to distribute this 0.8 into the quantity of r minus negative 5. So let's start off with 0.8 r and then positive. And this is, remember, this is kind of looks awkward. Let's make this a plus, right? And take the opposite of negative 5, so we'll make that positive 5. So think of that as r plus 5. So then we would have 0.8 times 5. Well, I know that 8 times 5 is 40, and I have one decimal there, so I would put that decimal would go over there and move over one place from that 40. So this is going to be plus 4. You can check that out on a calculator too if you like. And then we're going to, let's go ahead and make this plus a negative 4.1 instead of minus 4.1. So plus negative 4.1 equals 1.5. Now we can combine some like terms, and that is going to be this plus 4 and the plus negative 4.1. So if we look at that over here, we have 4 plus negative 4.1. What does this equal? Well, it is a positive being added to a negative, so we know we actually need to subtract. Negative 4.1 has a greater absolute value of 4.1 as opposed to positive 4's value of 4, and we know we're going to subtract. So we end up with just 0.1, right? So 0.1. And should this be positive or negative? Well, hopefully by now you recognize it should be negative because the negative 4.1 has a greater absolute value than 4. So we're going to make the sign match that. So we end up with 0.8r plus negative 0.1 equals 1.5. Now we need to go ahead and add 0.1 to each side to get rid of it from over here. What we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. And that'll leave us with those canceling, and we'll have 0.8r. And then this is going to be 1.6, right? Adding those together. Now we need to divide both sides by 0.8. What we do to one side, we do to the other. We're dividing because they're tied by multiplication. 0.8s are going to cancel each other, leaving us with r. And then we have 1.6, and we need to divide that by 8. So let's go ahead and put our decimal where it goes in the proper place in the answer. 8 will not go into 1, so we'll have no number there. Actually a 0, I guess you could say. And 8 will go into 16 twice. That'd be 16, and we get to 0, so we know it's 0.2. R equals 0.2. 0.2. All right, so those are all of my examples for IXL 8.W.9, where we solve multi-step equations. Good luck with your activity.